What's going on, guys? We are back here with another episode of the Remote Front Office. Today, we are doing the last lottery team. This is actually going to be the last of these off-season previews we do for the moment, because next week we are going to move almost strictly into draft-related content. I'm actually going to have a couple extra days because we are doing a live stream on Thursday, live reaction to the draft. I wanted to discuss it with you guys in real time. Friday will be a draft reaction show. And then there's going to be a couple other things planned. I don't want to give away the whole week, but we are doing 4 days of content next week. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, hit the notifications, and we will see you guys at that point. But let's go ahead and get into the New Orleans Pelicans rebuild first. So New Orleans had, I don't know if I want to call it a disappointing season, given the players that played when they played. But I want to call it a disappointing season because of at one point they were top 2 in the West for a solid month or so. And they really looked like they were putting everything together. Zion gets hurt. Brandon Ingram gets hurt. CJ misses a couple of games. Role players miss a couple of games. And then it just kind of rolls all into they don't make playoffs, right? At one point we thought that the Lakers were going to give them Victor Wembanyama. And then it turns out that they're keeping their own pick instead of trading picks with the Lakers because the Lakers made the playoffs. So first things first, we're going to cover their free agents coming up now, and then kind of give my thoughts on who they should pick. Due to the new CBA and just the new contracts kicking in and everything, they are going to be very restricted. So don't be surprised when I list their free agent target name, and it's not a very big list, right? The team is very deep, has a lot of young guys. They've drafted fairly well, I feel like. And I think they need to either do the OKC that I recommended and start consolidating, or they just got to have guys healthy, right? I think that's the top thing. But let's go ahead and start with their free agents to be. So first one is going to be Josh Richardson, unrestricted free agent. Personally, I think you just let him walk. You free up his minutes. Obviously, you're not bringing him back on his current deal. It's $12 million. He's overpaid at this point, I think is a safe thing to say. Maybe if you're bringing him back on a minimum or something like that, I could see it. But personally, I think at this point you free up his roster spot, right? Next guy is Jackson Hayes. This is probably the most unknown part of their free agency, I would say. He is a restricted free agent. As I have listed with a couple of teams, I would like to see him go somewhere else, as I just feel that Larry Nance has kind of taken their backup center minutes from him, as Larry Nance is just a better defender at this point in time. And I think unless Jackson Hayes really improves in that department, he's kind of going to get stowed away on the end of the bench for this team, right? You've got a lot of guys that play big for them. I think at this point, if you're going to give him the right deal, right, a 10 to 12 per, and he can show improvement, or even maybe if you look to trade him at the trade deadline, I think you just retain him for now and kind of figure out that later. Next guy for them is Willie Hernangomez. He is a team option. I would let him walk because, again, like I said, for Jackson Hayes, I think Larry Nance Jr. is, as of right now, their backup center, right? I think I understand he's probably a little shorter, not as great rebounding-wise, but he's more versatile defensively. I like him out there next to Zion. I like him out there next to Valanciunas. I think that all in all, as their roster is currently constructed, you need that defensive anchor. Willie Hernangomez is not that defensive anchor, right? Next guy for them, Herb Jones. I can't stress this enough. It's a team option for right now. Obviously, you're keeping him on that team option. You need to start talking extension with him. I understand he regressed this year as a shooter. I understand he's a little bit older as a second-round guy. But you can't let him walk next year, right? I don't even think you could let him get to free agency next year or restricted free agency, right? I think at this point, you got to lock down his deal. 10 to 12 per, I think, is a pretty safe number for what he gives you. World-class defender, can improve shooting-wise, not necessarily a perfect ball handler. I just think defensively, when you have Zion, you have a Brandon Ingram, you have a CJ McCollum, right? He has to be there. You're asking him to cover the best wing or best guard every night. You have to keep that. You cannot let him walk, right? Next guy is going to be Najee Marshall. He's on a team option. Keep him. I like his flashes. Again, I think another guy that's probably going to get buried a little bit. But worst case scenario, you keep him, and then maybe he's a part of a bigger deal around the trade deadline with like a Jackson Hayes and a pick or something like that. Um, so that is currently their free agents to be. Again, not a whole lot. As of yesterday, they're currently projected negative 60 million in cap. Obviously, that can change. If you guys don't know, a little behind the curtain, when I had initially started putting together the Raptors one that we did on Wednesday, they were, I think, negative like 45 or something. And then Fred declined his player option, and all of a sudden they were only like negative 15, and that kind of worked out, right? They are still going to have their biannual. They're probably going to be a tax-paying team, so they should have like a tax-paying mid-level. And obviously, depending on what apron they hit as far as the new CBA, if they're in that second apron, they're not going to have it. But for right now, base it off of they have a mid-level exception. They have a biannual, which is about 4.5. Team needs. Personally, I just think at this point, health, right? I think that's the biggest thing for them, right? Because you have Zion that misses a bunch of games. Brandon Ingram isn't the most durable player ever. CJ is getting up there in age, so obviously you're going to have to restrict him to probably 60-ish games, I would say. But with that being your quote-unquote big three, right, you have to have game split. You have to have chemistry built. You have to have, without your top talent, this role player core is good. It's just not good enough when you're missing those guys for 40% of the season to carry you to a playoffs in the West, right? It's just not. I mean, that's the reality for most teams, right? Most teams missing their top two guys aren't built deep enough to carry them into the playoffs. It's just not how the NBA works. Defense is another team need, I feel. Obviously, Valanciunas isn't the greatest defender. Zion's not a great defender, and he's kind of short for a center, so you can't really play him at the center. Brandon Ingram's decent, but not a perfect defender. CJ's not great. Obviously, you have Jose Alvarado. Not going to be, you're not necessarily putting him and CJ on the floor at the same time. I just think as far as center defense, Larry Nance is good. I just don't know if he's the starting caliber center in this league, right? So I think this team needs a little more defense, right? And then cap flexibility. You signed CJ to this extension, big extension that I didn't think you should have done. Valanciunas, who knows what you do with him? He's coming up, I believe, next year. You're going to have some of these younger guys start to, like your Herb Jones, your Jose Alvarados. Trey Murphy's going to be coming up in the next couple of years. This team's going to get really expensive really fast. And you just don't have cap flexibility. So either you need to find it, or you need to create it, or you need to make all your moves now before you're restricted in what you can do, right? But I think that's kind of like the big three as far as team needs to go for this team. As far as free agents, again, like I said, it's not going to be a big list because of how negative they are. They're going to be looking more on the minimum, mid-level exception, that sort of stuff. First name I have down is Danny Green. Unrestricted free agent. I think he would be a good mentor for Herb Jones, right? Maybe help him a little bit with the shooting, kind of bounce some things off him defensively. Granted, I know Danny Green wasn't like the best defender in the world, but he was solid at his moments, especially in San Antonio, and he's a good shooter. So I think having him there as a mentor for Herb Jones to kind of understand, because obviously Herb's going to be a lot of a catch and shoot kind of guy, corner guy. I just think Danny Green would be a good influence for him. Another guy that's kind of more of a mentor guy, Jay Crowder. Probably a minimum deal. He didn't really perform well in the playoffs. I think he'd be a good mentor more for like the Trey Murphy side. Again, solid defender, and I think top notch. Can kind of shoot, but not really. I think kind of as like that mentor role, that veteran, that 10th guy on the roster. I think one of those two guys is a good choice. Patrick Beverley, again, more of a mentor for Jose Alvarado. Maybe you can play him at a little bit of, if you want to go like full defense, you've got Jose Alvarado, Pat Bev, Herb Jones, Larry Nance, throw in like Trey Murphy or something, right? It's a pretty solid defensive team right there. So I think as a mentor, as just kind of that extra guy, I don't know if he'd go to New Orleans. Pat Bev doesn't strike me as a New Orleans guy. But I think as just an option possibly as you're looking at trying to get some vets in here, I think Pat Bev's a good option. Wesley Matthews, again, more of minimum type of guy. Mentor for Herb Jones. I'm really looking for guys to mentor Herb Jones so he can take that next step. Looking for guys to mentor Jose Alvarado so he can take the next step. Trey Murphy so he can take the next step, right? Larry Nance is very solidified in what he does. the superstars are the superstars. So unless you're getting a guy that's been a superstar, like how Vince Carter used to come in and mentor teams, right? I don't see that guy for them right now. Carmelo's announced his retirement. Obviously, Vince Carter's not around anymore. Iggy, I think, is either Golden State or retire at this point. I don't think he's just going to go around mentoring to extend his career. So I think at this point, you're kind of stuck with these sort of guys as the next chapter of vets to bring in for teams, right? The last guy I have is Cody Zeller. Obviously, you're probably not going to play him in a playoff rotation. That's what Larry Nance is there for, right? So I think it's just kind of a regular season center minutes soak up kind of person. I think he does really well, right? He showed flashes for Miami. He showed he is still an NBA player. I think, and especially, I don't think he's going to be that expensive to get on the open market. So I personally think he's probably one of the better options for them as far as like a backup center, because I don't think they can afford a Mason Plumlee, right? They do also have pick 14. Still kind of looking through who I want them to take. I'm not entirely sure. I almost want them to trade the pick, right? It's one of these situations where the team's not necessarily too deep, but has enough young guys already that they need to worry about developing, that I don't know if I want to add another young guy to a team that should be win now, that you're trying to mentor and get him on the right track, right? I think Dyson Daniels is enough of that sort of project. Same with like a Trey Murphy, those sort of guys, right? But the last question I guess I will put on for New Orleans is, let me know in the comments, if you guys are New Orleans, are you building this team to win with CJ McCollum as an important part? So I would say within the next 2 years. Or are you looking at hoping Zion takes more of a Joel Embiid route to where he's maybe a year or two away from starting to develop those better habits where he plays a little more? And then you're kind of contending more in like a 3 to 5 year range, right? Where Brandon Ingram's getting a little bit older, but Zion's hitting his prime. Herb Jones is a little bit older, a little more seasoned. You bring in another couple of guys, right? I just wonder what direction you guys think they should go, because I don't know. With Zion's injury history, Brandon Ingram's inability to stay healthy, I don't know what route's the best route for them at this point, right? But let me know your guys' thoughts below in the comment section. We, again, like I said, next week is primarily, I think, 90% draft content. So we'll do that. And then after the draft, we'll have the draft reaction Friday. I may do some sort of like trade prediction or trade reaction the following Monday. And we'll kind of just see from there. But I appreciate you guys coming through. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.